Last week I was chilling at home one night when I saw this guy I used to hang out with named Blaine posted a Google Maps screenshot of a house on his Snapchat story with the caption, "Swipe up if you know who lives here, because they stole my AirPods and according to Find My Devices, they're at this house," or something along those lines. As a joke, I swiped up and replied telling him to pull up on them, and he said he was going to. I asked if one of our mutual friends, Adil, was going with him, and he said yeah. For the hell of it, I offered to go with them, since I hadn't seen them in like 3 or 4 months and we all used to be really tight. The next day after school, we met up and took my car to the address. It was, of course, on the rougher, lower income side of town. We were pulling up to a cramped little house with all the blinds shut that wasn't in the best shape ever. We knocked on the door all confident-like, thinking that we were prepared for anything. Footsteps came to the door, then there was silence for a few minutes. Then the door cracked open by only like 3 inches. There was a 50s or 60s looking man there, nearly engulfed by complete darkness. There wasn't a single light on in his house. Blaine showed him the location of his AirPods, and he stood there for a really long time before saying he'd take a look around. Blaine asked if we could come in, and he took a really long pause again before agreeing and pushing the door open completely. The guy seemed like a weirdo for sure. The whole house was dark, which was creepy as hell. We could see a lot of the first floor from where we were standing, and the only lights were from these random night lights plugged into outlets by the floor, which were extremely dim. Minutes passed when the man emerged from the darkness at the top of the stairs and said he thinks he found them. Then he asked Blaine to come up and confirm this. So Blaine went upstairs and me and Adil continued waiting downstairs. We decided to do some snooping as we were waiting. We walked into an adjacent room, and there was a table in there that was covered in Polaroids. I walked over to take a better look. There was literally what had to be like 100 or so Polaroid pictures just scattered on top of this old coffee table. I was about to take a look at them when we suddenly heard the horrifying sound of Blaine screaming upstairs. Instantly, we ran upstairs and followed his screams to a bedroom. The door was locked from the inside. Me and Adil started pounding on the door and shouting, but all we could hear was Blaine screaming from inside. We started trying to kick the door down when it flung open and Blaine ran out screaming at us to follow him. We all ran to my car and peeled out. It turned out when Blaine followed the man into that room, he saw his AirPods lying on the bed. He went to get them when someone who was under the bed tried to grab him, as did the man who had answered the door. He was somehow able to fight them both off, unlock the door, and make a run for it. I'm glad we all made it out of there okay. This will definitely make me rethink the next time I charge into a situation all cocky like. I was traveling with my buddy Cassius. We were taking the I-40 out of Albuquerque west to LA. We were off to spend the weekend in LA with his twin brother and some mutuals. The trip took a lot longer than expected because we got a little lost. Siri seemed to be glitching or something, and we ended up way off track on some random highway through the desert with no cars at all. Then we lost service altogether. Cassius pulled the car over because he said he was stressed and has trouble driving while stressed. I had been pre-gaming with drinks already and walked behind some rocks to unleash a much-needed piss. As I was going, I heard scraping nearby. I looked out towards the desert but didn't see anyone. There were so many bush silhouettes out there, so for all I knew, someone could have been blending in easily. Then the metal scraping started again. I was paranoid, so I started squinting to try and see anything through the dark, closely examining every shadow outline I saw. And then I saw it. No more than 20 feet away is some super tall person who looked like they were wearing some triangular hood based on the shadow. I crept closer, drunkenly and stupidly thinking they hadn't seen me yet. Then something lit up. The person had started a fire, and the light cast on the figure allowed me to see they were wearing some white robes and carrying a shovel. It was freaky, and I realized I didn't have to go anymore, so I made my way back to the car. Then I heard whispering behind me. That made me move faster. To my surprise, Cassius was already behind the wheel with the engine running when I got back to the road. I got in and we left. I fell asleep thereafter, and when I awoke, we were back on the highway. I told him what I had seen. I expected him to laugh, but he got really serious. What he said next was chilling. He said while he was trying to reroute the directions in the car, he saw light coming from the desert, and there were 4 people wearing robes standing out there, and all carrying shovels. It was freaky. Those guys were literally in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night. What they could have possibly been doing out there is beyond me. For as long as I can remember, I've always had a fascination with late-night adventures. Anything from night hikes to urban exploration. I typically would record the abandoned places I visited and post them on YouTube. Anyways, on one windy night in September, I was in my Jeep headed over county lines out to this old tunnel some guys in my circle had been talking about recently. Apparently it was part of a larger sewer system that had been abandoned by the county, for whatever reason. I pulled up as close as I could to the opening, which was onto a grassy clearing approximately 20 feet from the tunnel. I live out in the country, so I wasn't worried about a cop passing by or anything. I grabbed my camera, which was a Canon Vixia HG20, perfect for my videos at the time, and headed into the tunnel. I'm a fairly short guy, so I was able to walk through it only having to duck my head slightly. It was pretty run-of-the-mill until the tunnel opened up slightly and began to move downward. From there, I noticed these strange marks all over the walls that looked like they were made by a bear or another animal of that nature. This wasn't bear country. As I moved deeper into the tunnel, I started to feel like I wasn't alone. Like the hairs on the back of my neck were standing up and I was constantly glancing around me. Along with that, I swore I was hearing noises echoing from deeper within the tunnel, like thuds and things like that. I told myself to just stop being a pussy and tried to focus on the footage. As the tunnel finally angled flat again, it got so narrow at first I thought I wouldn't be able to continue. I stepped over an old grate that had been torn down and now had to hunch my back to continue forwards. I was hit with a smell so strong it almost stunned me at first. I still can't think of anything I've ever smelled before to compare it to. It just smelled really sweet and chemically, if that makes sense. There was also some weird, dark, sticky liquid on the ground that was getting all over my Crocs. And yes, I was doing this in Crocs for the record. About a minute later, I saw that this liquid was now all over the walls like it had been splashed around. There was so much of it flooding the ground that I didn't want to keep going, for fear that it would seep through my Crocs. I sighed and made a mental note to make better footwear choices and turned, thinking I'd come back the next night. I stopped dead in my tracks when this loud chittering sound erupted. I spun back around. It was coming from a few feet into the darkness in front of me. I aimed my light in there, and then I fucking ran. I ran back the way I came, having to pick up one of my Crocs and run, holding it halfway back as it had come off my foot. I got to my Jeep and got out of there, promising myself I'd only ever go back there during the daytime. When I had shone my light in front of me, what I saw was nothing short of nightmare fuel. I could see half of some thing's body peering at me from around a bend in the tunnel. It had wrinkly skin that looked like it was lacking pigment, almost like the skin of a hairless cat. But the scariest part was its eyes. It had huge eyes that were glowing white and looking right at me. Exploring that tunnel at night was an idea that never really appealed to me again after that. This story takes place back when I was 23, walking home with my 2 friends after a night of bar hopping. We didn't have Uber or Lyft, so we just started walking home since we weren't far out anyways. After a few minutes of walking, we went our separate ways to continue walking home. The area isn't dangerous, and I was a 6'1" male, so I didn't really have an issue with walking alone at night. I was about 4 blocks away from home when I noticed a guy walking across the street behind me, in a windbreaker and jeans with the hood up. I don't think much of it and continue walking. Later, I become aware the man has crossed the street and is now behind me. I begin to speed up. So does he. I slow down. So does he. At this point, I was freaked out. He began to walk faster than my pace, and soon I heard his breathing and fast approaching footsteps as he had started running towards me. I took off and started taking some sharp turns down other streets in an attempt to lose him, and at some point I did. I hid in some bushes at the entrance to my cul-de-sac, and once I was positive he was gone for good, went inside my house. I made sure I locked all the entrances and then went upstairs to my room. I was slightly buzzed and dizzy, so I just collapsed into bed. The next morning I awoke with a bit of a hangover, so I dragged myself downstairs to make breakfast. It was really cold downstairs, which was strange because the AC had been broken in our home, and it was hot as hell last night. Even stranger, my cereal was missing. I knew I had 3 fresh boxes in the cabinet, and all of them were gone. I sat on the couch trying to think if my parents put them somewhere, when I heard something fall over in the garage. We've been having pest problems recently, so I grabbed the bottle of peppermint oil and went into the garage, but didn't see any bugs. A broom by the old fridge was knocked over, so I started setting it back up. That's when I spotted the fridge door cracked open, and an eye staring at me from inside. I pretended I didn't notice and left the garage, locking the door behind me and calling the cops. They said they'd be there soon, and the operator told me to hide and not to make my presence known, so I locked myself in the bathroom. Right after that, I called my parents and told them what was happening, and they said they'd be home soon. A few moments later, I heard the garage door opening. Then someone tried opening the bathroom door, but soon gave up and walked back into the garage. I didn't leave until the police showed up. When they went into the garage, the guy was still there, just hiding in the fridge. The same guy who followed me last night, and he had broken in through a window in the garage that was unlocked. They took him away, and I'm guessing he went to prison. It was an ordinary Friday. I used to take the 7th period computer science class at my school. Most people at my school didn't take 7th periods, so the campus was pretty much mostly empty after 6th period ended for the day. I was taking the class with my friend Esteban, and typically we would sneak out of class a lot after our teacher took attendance and come back before the period ended. The class consisted of our teacher, Mr. Bedford, giving us a coding assignment for the day and just telling us to do it. Then he would sit at his desk in the front of the room and wouldn't get up for the entire period. Me and Esteban sat in the back so we could easily leave without him noticing. That particular day we snuck out of class and walked 3 buildings over to where the gym was, which was almost always unlocked until 7th period ended. We met our other friend Sam there, who hadn't gone home yet, and we just grabbed some basketballs from the closet and started shooting around. At some point while we were shooting, I randomly looked towards the back corner of the gym where the door to the locker room was, and I swear to God I could see a face looking at us through the glass. I yelled, "Yo, who's that?" and pointed, but the face moved away right as I said that. I swore up and down to my friends someone was in there. Sam started getting paranoid, thinking it was a teacher and we were going to get in trouble. We decided we were going to go over there to see if it was a teacher. The three of us walked into the locker room, and it was almost pitch black in there. We looked around our immediate surroundings for a light switch, but couldn't find one. I had never really been in the locker room before because it was my freshman year and I hadn't joined a sport yet, nor was I required to take a PE class or anything like that. We all froze as a loud metallic clang echoed from further within the room. I think in reality, we were all shitting bricks, but Sam was the only one actually voicing how scared he was. I said I was going to take out my phone and turn on the flashlight and aim it down there. And I did that. We didn't see anything and everything was quiet now. "Let's just go," Sam kept saying. I decided I was with Sam at that point. But before I could turn to leave, Esteban grabbed my arm and told me to listen. There was the sound of something dragging against the lockers, like fingernails or something. It was a horrible sound. I aimed my flashlight towards the sound, and there was a head peeking around the side of one of the lockers towards us. I was speechless, but Esteban shouted, "Who's there?" The head was near the ground, as if the person was lying down, but it began to move upwards as it seemed the person was standing up. Then there was another sound from the opposite direction. Someone was walking quickly towards the doorway. "Fuck this," Sam said, and we all simultaneously turned around and ran out of the locker room. We didn't stop running until we were right outside my classroom. We asked ourselves if those could have been teachers or something, but none of us could really say for sure. I still go to that school today, and I've never gotten a clear explanation for who those people could have been.